right, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another session of Amplifying F Sharp. Amplifying F Sharp is an initiative to make the F Sharp ecosystem better. As we've done a couple of these streams right now, just dive in straight to the topic of today. We'll be having Paul over who's going to be talking about error handling. And as usual, we have a website, Amplifying F Sharp, GitHub.io, where we sort of elaborate on what we are. There is a join us page over there where you can enter some information to get on the stream itself. But with further ado, let's just go to our today's session, which is with Paul Blasphemy Masuki, I'm sorry, about error handling in FsAutocomplete. All right, take it away, Paul.
Hi. All right, great. Glad to be here. This is awesome. Thanks for having me. Let me just get my screen share going real quick. We are going to talk about error handling and FsAutocomplete. And just quickly, a little background about me. I have been doing F Sharp for quite a few years now and have sporadically contributed on and off to different uh, open source projects in the F Sharp community. I've actually previously contributed something to FS Autocomplete ages and ages and ages ago. Actually, code base looks totally different now, so that's cool. But this whole session sort of comes about because one of the things I'm always banging on about is error handling, and you've got this great notion of, well, in .NET you throw exceptions, but in functional programming we use these rich and expressive sum types to capture that a result, that an operation might succeed or it might fail. And one of the things that Jimmy and I have talked about a whole bunch, and that prompted this whole session today, is I always feel like everybody doesn't go quite far enough. It's like, yay, we have this great rich type system. Look, I can model it as success or failure. And if it's success, it's some big complex domain model that I've modeled beautifully that encapsulates my domain and yada 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 yada. And if it's an error, I give you a string. It's like, okay, well, that's great. You've given me You've said how you have this great rich type system, and then when it comes to the error, you're just like, whatever, string's good enough. Yeah, we can pretend we're in JavaScript, string's good enough. It's like being in R, type of string, 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 string. Because, and so this is sort of the whole issue is like, the thing about being given a string is you can't really do anything with a string programmatically. And I mean, you could log it, you could write it to the console, you could maybe display it to a user. And for things that are, basically just exceptions, maybe that's okay. But sort of the whole notion of sort of the rich error handling, of returning a result object, of having some in program flow handling of failure, is presumably you want people to do something programmatically with it. And it's just, as a developer, it's not a good, as a consumer of libraries, it's not a good experience to want to try to do something programmatically with a big old string. I'm going to have to run regexes on it, or I'm not going to be able to do anything with it and just log it to console. So this is one of these things I'm constantly in forums and chat rooms, whining about. And Jimmy was like, "Yeah, we have a couple of places in FsAutoComplete where we do this, and it's awful. Maybe we should take a look at it and see if we can come up with something better." And so that's where we are today, looking at FS Autocomplete. And I did a little research and a little pre-gaming on things, and very specifically, we're going to start as sort of a jumping off point at looking at one specific part of the FS Autocomplete interface, specifically in the language server protocol, which is the sort of the standard protocol that INET implements, that Microsoft defined, that plugs into VS Code and Vim and those other things. There's this method that gets called when, text document hover. When somebody hovers over a piece of text, it sends a message from the client, from the edit the editor, to the backend, to the LSP, the LSP server, and it says, hey, it's a hover. We need more information based on this is where we're hovering in the document. And what happens, or what is, according to the spec, what's meant to happen, is you either send back this hover information, or you send back null if if hovering can't really be done, if there's no information to be given. Maybe it's a weird place in the code base, maybe there's not document information, whatever it is. So what actually happens in FSAC, though, is if we go look at this, where's my bookmark? Bum, 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 bum. If we actually go look at this, what winds up happening is you wind up getting an error. Okay, so that's maybe not amazing. That's a whole separate conversation. But you get an error, and then the error, if we look at it, is just a string. So again, all we can really do with it is go ahead and log it and move on. And sure, we return LSP result internal error, but if you go look at this, it's just a string. I mean, it's wrapping it into gRPC for the client server protocol, but it's just ultimately saying, hey, the error is a string. So there's not much to do with it. So I guess backing up a level, uh,
Yeah,
the
I think one thing I'd like to touch on is the fact that the LSP protocol allows you to specify a certain types of errors. And so if you actually if you go back to the code base, oh yeah, I guess that's a good place to put it too. But yeah, perfect. And so this allows you to specify certain types of errors, and they don't really give you a lot. I mean, I think there's ways of doing custom stuff too, but we're not going to handle custom stuff because that would mean every server would have to know about them, and it's just not worth it. And so the 5 that we have available to us is a parse error, an invalid request, a method not found, invalid params, turnaround error. I think there's also canceled. I don't know why it's not actually on here, but uh,
canceled is down here. Server canceled.
okay, yeah, there's some more. Okay,
There's
so
also
there's actually
request canceled.
more.
There's a couple other ones, but yeah, most of these are not. Yeah, I mean
And so the ones
it
that
even
we really have to handle at the server level, because the way that the implementation is set up for the language server protocol is we shouldn't have to really worry too much about anything else other than like we have an error or we had to cancel this because of some other request. And so in terms of like harping on like cancellation, that's if you end up having a bunch of different like you type multiple times. Like every time you type, we want to do a type check and see like did you type something that's valid? And so we're going to run a type check, but that type checking can take some time. And so the next time you type, we want to cancel the previous type check request and keep going on. And so you'll get back still a response that this thing was canceled, but that's fine. We don't really care most of the time on cancellations. But in the other case, all we really can do is say we have an error. And so that's the only way we can specify these things. And so we end up sending these errors. But in this particular case, on our tooltip hover, we don't want to like we have the ability to send back null or none, and it'd be none in our F sharp case, but it's the null. Like we don't actually have some information about some things, but we may be sending an error back down when it's actually not really an error. I think Paul, if you want to show that particular
Yes,
error case exactly.
I was just about to pop over to that.
Sweet.
That's basically what's happening here. You do actually fall into this block here where, oh, we got an error, but it honestly would probably be more sensible. We already in the code allow for a path where you return none. Hey, there's no information about the hover, but for some reason we don't fall into that. Instead, we fall into this error because if you go look at this guy where we actually try to do the work, what winds up happening is the Lexer is looking for information based on a line number and a column, a position in the text file. And when it can't find a match, it just immediately goes to the error. And then this just bubbles through. So you could either, if you didn't want this to be an error, you could either put some more smarts in here, or going back a level to where this guy comes in, you would have some more intelligent handling here. But that's going to be a little bit harder because all E is a string, right? So handling it here is not really great. And this is sort of, I think, where the crux of the issue comes from. Here you only have a string, so doing something intelligent's not so easy. But here you only have none. You don't necessarily, because of where this try get tooltip enhanced gets used, because it's only returning an option, or sorry, not that good, because find long indents is only returning an option. It makes it a little bit harder to say, oh, well, this isn't an error in this case, because presumably there could be cases where if find long ident does return none, then it is properly an error. So I'm not 100% certain the best way forward, but it feels like what we've actually got is sort of not quite a failure situation, but another path through the code that we haven't fully thought through and isn't maybe modeled optimally. So that's
That's
maybe,
what I'd agree with that. This is more of a like we want to know a reason. Like this is kind of one of those warning paths. You'll see this kind of
yeah,
crop up every
yeah,
once in a while with results where you have like an okay, a warning, and like an error path where it's like this isn't really an error, but you might want to think about this. It's somewhere in between, and this is one of those cases where it's like we
Does
couldn't find any
everybody
information
remember?
about this, but should you tell the user like stop everything, the world's corrupted? No, it's not. It's just we
yeah.
don't have any
Do y'all
information about
remember the
this.
world of Chessie
I remember
Oh
Chessie.
yes.
back in the day? It
We
had
try,
that concept as a
yeah,
top level.
yeah. We actually embedded sort of a list of warnings as a concept into sort of the OK case. We had some interesting debates about that. I actually, whether should it be in the top level case or as part of the OK case, or is it really its own separate case where we have warnings? And I've seen people do it that way as well. In Chessie, we put it into the OK case, the success case. I've definitely seen other code bases where people do a 3-state. They do OK, warn, and error. And there's no right answer here, but it is definitely the binary of success or failure is sometimes too black and white and not really granular enough for the realities you find yourselves in. And that's, I think, what we have here. So, um, but yeah, I remember Chessie doing that. Yeah, that's kind of what we need, I guess, because find long idents is just returning none or the actual ident information. So also I want to apologize. I will accidentally mispronounce ident as indent at least 2 more times during this session because that's just how my brain is wired. But anyway, so what I was looking at and what I was thinking we could potentially do is now it gets a little tricky, but if instead of the result of this guy being a result of option or string, if we made the result type or the error case here, if we modeled some more operation here, then we could do something a little bit smarter. We'd have to be a little careful though, because one of the things that winds up happening is, you know, the compositionality of a result object makes it a little bit like async in that it has a little bit of that sort of like cancerous quality of wanting to infect everything. And if you look, what actually winds up happening is a lot of these things are working in terms of LSP result, which they wrap it up in a that JSON RPC stuff, but it's still the error case is still just a string there. So I think we can put a different error case here in the return from try get tooltip enhanced, but I think we're going to have to be careful that we are going to run into probably need to some adapters to massage it later on into the LSP result type that is coming from the Ionide language server protocol library. But I guess
Yeah, the compositionality is the one thing that's actually kind of, I think, interesting, specifically for this session, is because we have lots of like member methods on things. So you can't put a type, like you can't put a discriminating union next to your member functions.
right, it
And
just
so you have to
it
put
doesn't
somewhere
work.
else. And do you create an error type for literally every member? And like how
That's
explosive that gets, right? That gets kind of
yeah, that's
gross.
kind of
And
messy.
we have to discuss the trade-offs between that. Like it's cool from a modeling point, but when you have, if we're going to do this to, we're not doing this today and all this, but if we do this to literally every endpoint, are we going to have hundreds of these error types? Is that like, from an ergonomic standpoint of programming, is that workable? Maybe. I don't know.
And it's one of those other things that you talk about sort of ergonomics and how do things scale. This is one of those conflicts that you see a lot with we all love Scott and his work, and one of the things that he's very much brought to the fore in people's minds is using using a union to exhaustively model and handle all of your potential error cases. But the problem is that's a closed hierarchy, and so the good/bad thing, the double-edged sword of closed hierarchies is, well, they wind up having to encompass the world. Then you kind of have to stuffing more and more and more in there. An open hierarchy, like you have with exceptions, things can come and go, things can scale, but you never truly get exhaustivity. So, one of the things that I've been playing around separately from here that I don't think is necessarily going to come to fruition, but would be cool if it had happened in F# to begin with, is if results were both, closed and open at the same time. Like if the error case was required to implement an interface, I mean, there are some weird trade-offs there around exhaustivity, but then you could potentially say, we define things in terms of this interface, and then as the code base scales and grows, more errors implement this interface. But I don't know that that's a good approach here necessarily, but it is something to think about that might work, because the interface lets you keep that compositionality and doesn't lock you into that sort of one hierarchy, one type that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger over time because it models the whole universe. The trade-off being the minute you put a result in there, you lose that nice exhaustive handling property that you get from some types as or for modeling errors. So that's another thing to consider. I guess the other question I have about this specific implementation, the other idea that could work is, it's funny that Chet mentioned Chessie. We could also take the approach Chessie took. We could, my original thought was to modify string here and have the return type, the error model of this method be more robust, but we could also flip it around and have the success type be something that has more variance to it than option. That's also potentially an option, no pun intended, that we could pursue. I'm not sure what's more palatable. I guess since we have some of the actual maintainers of FSAC here, it's really your guys' call. I mean, I could see it argued both ways. Is warning more of a success operation, or is warning more of a failure operation?
I mean, the thing is, we already exposed this as a result option, and we are consuming an option. We could, like, if we wanted to, we could also, here's another option, is we log and return none. Is that a value? Like, that could also be a thing that's simple.
Yeah.
Like, that would be a very minimal code change. And would that give us enough would that feel good enough, though?
I got to be honest, I think for this very specific use case, it would probably be fine. Like I'd be okay with it. I don't think, looking at the larger FSAC code base, I don't think it's not something I'd like to see become a widely used precedent. It's something where in a few key places, I think it does make sense and is the right choice. And I would be fine with it here. But I think if you wanted to look at it, I wouldn't look at that and say, this is exactly how you should handle this in most cases, because in most cases, that's probably going to lead you down a dark path.
Can I interject a little bit?
Please do.
So when folks report issues to IONIDE or FSAC, a lot of times they're reporting them because they saw something that looked suspicious or that they think correlated with a negative behavior that they saw. Oftentimes, what they're reporting is from like the output pane or the extension host, where there's a stack trace saying something like cannot find ident for tooltip that is 10 lines deep. In many cases, it's my opinion that this is not actually a failure of the overall system. Like, it shouldn't be reported as an error. The functionality couldn't be delivered at that point in time, and it's worth logging that using our like logging tracing infrastructure, so that from a diagnostic perspective, devs can go in and try and figure out why that was. But I think it is a bit of a misnomer to report these as an LSP protocol level error, right? If you actually, a real fun thing that you can do sometimes is if you go to the extension view of VS Code and look at IONIDE, there is a display here that talks about, like, in the details for IONIDE, I think runtime status on the tab there on the right. Yeah, there's tons of uncaught errors here that aren't actually actionable for users. right? The kinds of errors that would be actionable here are things like, hey, I couldn't even find a .NET to start up in the first place, right? But cannot find ident for tooltip is utterly useless to an end user. And so these kinds of things are part of our loosey-goosey error handling scheme currently, and also part of an evolution in our understanding of the protocol, right? Null or none in our parlance is an acceptable answer for some of these questions, and we're not giving that answer back. So working from the user experience side, I think we should look at why we're not returning none in these specific cases, and then talk about what data we would need to flow up to let us know when it's safe to return none. So back in the parse and check results, I saw like 3 places where we were defaulting to error here. And I would just as soon replace those with, like Jimmy was saying, a trace log or something, and then returning null or none there. Because in the overall signature of the method, we're saying that it's okay for this thing to return a none because the signature is result option of T.
The other thing that sort of jumps out at me from sort of a pattern standpoint, sort of a not a hard and fast rule, but sort of a code smell standpoint, the fact that we are calling error so many times, but with the exact same message, right? Like it's, if everything is type object, you don't really have a type. So the fact that we're not differentiating the different errors means that, that to me is sort of like a smell that, well, maybe, yeah, this is not actually an error. This is not actually something that's useful. It's just as good as return. It's just as well to return none because, returning error no tooltip information in like 4 or 5 different places doesn't actually help me with anything. It might as well be none because you're not containing any additional error information there, right? So
yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Cool. So if I wanted to start hacking on this, which I don't know that I'm going to get anywhere with it, but so for instance, what we would have to do to modify this is this try get tooltip enhanced would have to are the tracing. I noticed that there's the OTel stuff, but then there's also logging, right? So do those things have to then just be passed in from the caller,
Nope.
or are they globally?
They're globally available.
Oh, nice. You made FS activity. Okay, cool.
I have some I have some wrapper libraries. If you want to actually go back to the file explorer on the side, if you go to our VS Code or what is it, FsAutocomplete logging library, it's like in the source.
Yeah, there we go. This bad boy.
So there's 2 files in here, both of which I've authored.
FsLibLog. I haven't seen FsLibLog in a while, but I remember FsLibLog. This is excellent.
So this thing is just kind of like so there is a really old library called liblog. It's no longer around, but for a while the problem that a lot of C# library authors faced was there was no good way of doing logging from their project without creating like a diamond dependency problem, meaning that like they take a dependency on a specific logger or some type of interface, and as that interface evolves, you may not be able to actually consume their logs. And so it was better to just have like a source available thing that did some like reflection magic and looked up stuff. And that's basically what this does. Is this integrates with Serilog, but you can actually pass in whatever you want to it as long as you implement the right functions. And so this just is a globally available thing useful for our application, and technically even any logging library that wanted to hook up. So we actually use this a lot in our other libraries, and they just use it, and then we just get logs because this all just works magic. There's all just magic here. It's a bunch of magic. And
logging
then similarly,
might be one of the. You did something similar. You do something similar for FS OpenTelemetry.
Yeah, very similar. There is kind of like this need for an F# wrapper for OpenTelemetry. Like the OpenTelemetry implementation in .NET is strange. It's not what the rest of the world does. Because it was there before OTel, so it's like, I mean, I don't know. They made the right call for them, but the hard problem with F# specifically is that we don't have the, what do they call it, the Elvis operator, which is the question mark
Right.
dot that
Right.
lets you kind of deal with nulls, because technically an activity, when you ask for an activity, it's basically just like this little object that you start hanging stuff on, and it may not be there. And so this
Correct.
little wrapper allows you to just kind of call stuff safely without having to have if null everywhere in your code. And then I also slapped a bunch of stuff in here that's very useful from a convention standpoint. Like you'll automatically get the source code, you automatically get the line, you'll automatically get which function, you also get what namespace, and so you get a lot of this like stuff for free. So this is mostly just a bunch of like learnings and stuff I put into like another wrapper for this.
This is something that absolutely I think is going to be, as OTel becomes more popular, this is something I think is going to be more and more useful for more and more libraries, and not even libraries, but actual applications that are wanting to plug into this. This is cool. I'm going to be stealing pieces of this. Fair warning.
Yeah, I mean these two files are meant to just literally copy and paste into your projects, and so
Love it.
edit
Love
them.
it.
If
Love
you
it.
find anything wrong with them, please send a pull request or whatever. But we've been using
absolutely.
them for, I don't know, well, the FS liblog we've used for years at this
Well,
point.
yeah, absolutely.
And the OTel one I pulled over into, I don't know, maybe like 6 months ago or something like that. It's kind of cool if you ever want to hook up FsAutocomplete and with OTel. It's also some good work from some contributors to the F# compiler. There's OTel in the F# compiler, so you can actually see deep into that guts, and so you can see like why is FsAutocomplete slow, and it's maybe not even us. Like most of the time, like a lot of times it's still like the F# compiler has to do a lot of work, and so you can see stuff. But
yeah,
that's a deeper dive into that later.
I don't want to go tempt the live demo gods by spinning up Docker and actually getting my copy of Jaeger running, but it would be fun to turn that on at some point. Hey, if I had thought of it, I would have turned it on earlier. But
so there's a kind of question being begged here, which is what type of logging or tracing is relevant for the change that you're about to do.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going with this. And then I don't know that a trace is actually useful here, but you guys correct me if I'm wrong. I would think this is something that's better as just a simple log message, but very much at a lower, I don't know if it's considered lower or higher, but not the default, certainly not error and not sort of a default setting, but sort of maybe at a level where you would reach for the extra verbosity, that sort of level of logging is sort of my gut feeling on it, because I absolutely don't think it's anything that should even be remotely a concern for consumers. It's really only interesting for people who are working on FSAC itself. So that's my thought process. But if you think there's a strong reason to put it in an actual activity source or as an actual trace or whatever, I mean, we could do that. That's not a problem. I was just sort of
Yeah, I don't think a trace is necessary here. This is one of those, just it evolves over time, right? You will just, if we need it, we'll add it. But I feel like for now, I think having some type of logger is fine. So the one thing that will be necessary here, luckily it looks like you don't actually have to deal with it. So we do have a logger available. So in
that's
terms of
how
like
is
using fsliblog,
yeah.
you do have to at least specify a logger about like where you're at. So in this case, on line 43, we have a logger already available. But that's just to basically just give it some identifier about where you are.
Yeah, and that's not unreasonable. That's I'm in the wrong place. In the grand scheme of things, that's not an unreasonable trade-off. It still makes the logging relatively simple.
Yep.
Now then the other question is, what do we actually want to put in here? So this guy will actually become this, right? But then what sort of actual message makes sense? Because again, I cannot
think
find
at least the file name and probably the position and maybe just the line string too. Maybe all three of those.
Do we think info or do we think at like a lower
This
level?
It's hard for me. I never know.
Yeah, I always invariably at work, I always think I've got the right level, and then I set up the PR, and my teammates are like, "Why are you logging this so loudly? Push it down a level."
So it's kind of a moot point because in Ionide specifically, there's really only a quiet loud toggle.
All right, well, then info
Right.
is good enough.
Yeah. For our other clients like, Vim, NeoVim, Emacs, etc., they have more granular control over the options they pass in to the FSAC server. So they might care more, but I feel like we can let them chime in.
They could submit a PR.
Yeah, I was gonna say someday someone could submit a PR that allow us to actually get because there's technically a mapping of name and info level, and so if we could have some type of descriptor about that, you could fine tune which logs you actually want. But most of the time these are dev only logs anyway.
Actually, do I need to add context destructured? Is that the right, or is there I mean, you can't really destructure.
Yeah, that was a bad name for that, but it's very descriptive. That's really only useful for like objects that are like kind of deep. If it's like a simple log, it's not too big of a deal.
So it's not add, is it just add parameter?
Um,
What am I doing wrong here? I'm missing
I think it's just
something.
add. Oh, so the
Oh, yeah, so I can just actually do like this.
yeah, yep. So that's about ordered. So there's two different. So this is actually a fault in many logging libraries. So this is kind of my personal bias put into the API. A lot of structured logging libraries, specifically in like .NET, have this notion of using positionality for your logging statements. And so create a message template, you have some positions here, like the first thing in the template will be used. And as long as but if you reorder those, like, and you don't reorder your template, you put things in the wrong place. And so if you use that add context instead of parameters, if you use add context, you can specify what string you're replacing.
Oh, that's lovely. I like that. I like that much better.
Yeah.
I like
Well,
that a whole lot better.
Do you want the like super magical version of how this can work too?
Oh my God. Good.
Look for any usages of set message I. You might hate it, but you might like it.
Depends on how you feel about message templates generally.
I love message templates. That's beautiful.
This one's actually wrong, actually.
First one I went to was wrong. Super.
Another one that has like a colon. There should be one.
This one. Yep.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
So this one is blending string interpolation and message templates, and this can be a little mind bending for some people, but you might like it.
I'm digging it. I am absolutely digging it. That makes a lot of sense to me. Set message I, and then basically what you're
just be like string, that you replace. Well, you just want the whole string here for this. So
you also want pause column, right?
Yep. Well, so this will be the whole message now instead of like the top message.
Oh yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's just like replace cannot. Yep.
Yeah. And then we gotta do.
And so people are gonna look at this and be like, no, this is not a message template. You're not replacing this stuff correctly. And it's like, yes, I am actually. This is actually a very specific syntax that looks at the like string formatting scenario, because we're actually using the string interpolation with that $. I'm rewriting the string for you to do all this stuff, so you don't have to have all that like add destructured, add parameter stuff.
And I am almost getting it in the last second, not because of this.
I think it's just the paren that you have.
No. It's not the paren. It doesn't like the dot, because I'm trying to do it's trying to expand an identifier inside the so that dot is causing some.
That's interesting then.
Yeah,
then
I thought maybe parenthesizing it would fix it, but that seems to cause other issues.
Interesting. So
yeah, I'm gonna just pull pause column into a local variable for a minute then.
Yep.
Because why not? So it's a little low tech, but it works, right? Uh-oh. No, this is wrong. Something else is wrong.
But
Oh, there it is.
should you not just move the column colon out?
Oh no, it's good.
Yeah, that works for me. Did I miss something? Yeah.
Nope, I think that's all. That looks
No,
good to me.
I triggered my auto formatting keyboard trigger and it didn't reformat anything, which always makes me suspicious. It always makes me suspicious if I formatted something correctly on my own.
But inside the braces, you should only have the variable, right? The code, like the column, and not the column colon.
Nope, no, because this is a very distinct thing in structured logging. Is you want to give firm names for your structured logs. The reason for that is you want to be able to look at these logs in the future with like queryable. So whatever application you send your logs to, you want to be able to query these things and be able to have reliable names. If you use like the variable name that you have in your code, people can change these willy-nilly and not realize they're breaking like the ops team's availability to query your logs. And you want to give firm names.
I
Additionally,
completely
you
agree.
probably also want to have very specific names that you reuse all the time, so you don't have 25 variations of the same concept. But that's a separate thing. We don't need that in this particular case.
No, but in this particular instance, I am going to do this.
Yep.
Oh, it's not allowing underscores.
On a technical level, how is
Fine.
this still a valid interpolated string?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Yeah, inside the braces should be
You can look at
code,
the
right?
implementation of it if you want to.
What's that?
Oh yeah, which column, which way is it? Because if you look at, okay, so it's the opposite way. Oh, that's the reason we were looking. If you hover over message I, it tells you what's the template for this. And so
Oh, yeah. So it's I want to
it's
log, right?
reverse
So I had them backwards. So it's the thing you want to log, but the name. This is the thing coming from code. That's the thing you want to log it as, which means
this could
probably.
actually,
Yeah, you could just do that. Oh, you got it. You beat me to it. There you go. Yep.
Yep.
We had them backwards. That's my bad. I was just thinking like key value, but you've got them flipped, which makes sense. Value as alias. So that's
Yep.
If
cool.
you're wondering why we have to do this explicit naming, it's because the .NET Interpolated Strings API does not capture the name of the thing that you passed into the expression. You may be familiar with other ecosystems like JavaScript that do this capturing.
Mhm.
We just don't. And so you have to provide that name in some other way. There are, I think, some additional BCL APIs starting in .NET 7 and .NET 8 that do start providing you the expression names in certain scenarios, but the F# support for interpolated expressions has not like advanced to meet that. There's an open issue, of course.
That's all right. That totally makes sense. And I suppose is a little off track, but whatever. Is the colon operator actually determined by the overall .NET level interpolated string mechanics, or is that just
Nope.
an arbitrary choice?
That's all my custom implementation of stuff.
Just curious. And I haven't dug in at this level of things. So
Yeah,
that's awesome.
anyone can go look at that and see what's going on. It's definitely not the most efficient thing for a while. So if you're like super worried about your logs being like the most efficient thing, like that's not the case. But we don't get a lot of the benefits anyway from like doing the cogen stuff that C# can take availability of. So
I also, in this particular context, I can't imagine this would be slow enough to really cause an issue in the overall running of INI.
yeah, it doesn't matter if especially if the log level is below the threshold, it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine, logging is one of those things where, yes, logging can have a cost, but 90% of the time, the most expensive part is that very last mile where you actually have to write the log message somewhere.
Yep.
It's just sort of like time as a factor for performance. Like people always say, oh, exceptions are expensive. Exceptions are expensive. Well, no, throwing exceptions are expensive. Until you've thrown it, it's just it's just a small pointer in the heap. It's not at all expensive.
Right.
But so it's sort of the point in time expense. All right, so that's one. That's cool. That handles that. I guess I should go and do the others as well. And
Yeah.
because I'm lazy, I'm going to actually just copy and paste. Except that happened. Right, there we go. I don't know if that's the right way to format that, but maybe Fantomas will come along and tell me the right way to format things eventually. No, I really thought Alt-Shift-F would kick in I don't know. Anyway, so, and then one more here. Wrong button, Paul. There we go. Also, I somewhat unrelated. I'm relieved that you'll use 2 spaces indentation. My day job, they use 4 spaces indentation, and as I have a habit of being on smaller screens, it means I see less and less and less of the files when my colleagues are writing, 120, 140, 200 character long lines. So I'm glad you guys are doing 2 spaces indenting. Very cool.
About that.
Uh-oh.
I've gotten some pushback about that recently. That is currently my opinion written into the editor config. But as is everything else, it is up for debate at any time.
That is also a problem for me specifically, because I actually have some accessibility concerns, but I use that basically solves the problem. And because the thing is, I agree from a line length perspective, but it's I can't reason about it with my vision problems without rainbow indents. And so as long as I have rainbow indents, I don't care. I think it's perfectly fine.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I suppose I could get a bigger monitor. I don't have to have a tiny monitor. I'm just one of the things I found, I spent a lot of time on my laptop, but I find that when I had a very different desktop setup from my laptop setup, I would lose a lot of productivity and muscle memory when switching to the laptop setup on the road. So now I've just made it so that the laptop setup is the setup, so that the muscle memory is already there wherever I go with the laptop. So the screen's not suddenly different, the keyboard's not suddenly different. That's a small thing. But yeah, okay, never mind then. I'm rambling. Where was I? Okay, so that's this guy. I think this works. Now, my next question.
There's one more error down here that we've missed.
You're right. We missed this last one. Now, this one's interesting. This is coming from a signature formatter. Get tooltip details for symbol use. Is this technically going to be in the same sort of no information space as these other ones? Because these other ones were all very clearly just would we want to have a different error message logged here, or is this still just sort of the same message?
I do think a slightly different message would probably be better. It's probably good to kind of look at why we're logging these things and see if we can give at least some semblance of where we got to. And so even if it is just a minor difference about the log, I think
for this one, I would maybe want to have the symbol actually tracked into the log message, because we've now got some additional context from this symbol. So
right. And even then, I still think if lazily, you can just stick something slightly different in the string to make it available.
honestly, can I actually just do this?
Yes, you can.
Symbol, symbol, colon, symbol, symbol. And actually, because I'm just going to do that. That way, when it prints out, it'll look a little different. And yeah, there we go. Cool. I guess we could, these other ones, looking at them, yeah, I don't know if you feel these should be changed. I'm happy to change them. I'm not 100%.
We can do that later. They don't have to do it for this session. We can do that in the code review.
Those don't seem like a big deal. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So now my next question, I guess, is if I've followed things correctly, doing this should be sufficient that we don't have to make any changes up here in text document hover, and instead, what we should just start seeing happening is a lot more code falling into that path instead of the error path underneath it. So the next question is, what's the easiest way to test this?
Well, I'd actually, before we even get there, look at the signature of what we just, or look at all the changes that we made. Do we even need that signature like that anymore? Is it ever returning an error case?
Sorry. Okay. You know what? That's a great question. That is a great question. I don't think it is. I don't think we have any actual errors, which means probably we don't need a result in there. And the return type could actually just go to this, because we can then just, all of these OK nones can just be none. And somewhere in here, there's an OK sum that'll just become sum. Ah, wrong button. Sorry. That's weird. It's not letting me, oh, well, whatever. Do it that way. There we go. No, that was the wrong. There we go. I think the live server kind of messed up some of my key bindings, but whatever. Not a problem. Okay. And I think you're right. I think this does actually clean things up quite a bit, but this does mean that, wait, why is this giving me an error? What's it yelling about? Yes, so show me the problem. Why am I not seeing this?
What is it complaining about here? This is meshing.
Here we go.
Signatures.
File. Your love signature files.
Yes, yes, I'm fine with that because we have a keyboard shortcut that will jump me to the signature file, right? Go to type definition. No.
I don't think I finished that work. I'm sorry. I think if you do go to
No.
Yeah, I didn't finish that work. I'm sorry.
It's perfectly okay.
Yep.
It's fine. It's fine.
If you read Florian's recent blog post about the graph-based type checking, he talks a bit about how signatures interact with that feature, but he does mention that different editors may or may not handle the relationship between signatures and implementation files super well. He was meaning us. We don't handle the links very well.
It's really all
which is not to
editors,
say that we can't, right? Like the LSP protocol has different kinds of relationships, like knowledge of declarations versus implementations. So it's really just implementation work on us to identify these different locations of the symbol or the member and tag them with the different kind of reference they are. And then all of the VS Code tooling should just light up.
That's good
Help
to know.
wanted for that, by the way.
I did not know that. That's good to know. Wait, what did I just do wrong? Whoops. Okay, I guess we're not going to indent those. None. There we are. And then this whole block goes away because it doesn't exist anymore. There we are. Look at that. That's pretty clean, actually. There we go. Takes a minute to catch up, but yeah, there we are. That's much better. Much, much better.
Yep. And then I think the one thing you did mention is the end there is that the none case, we don't really want to return a error anymore. I
Right.
think.
That's sort of the point. We don't error on none, so I took that out. Oh no, this error. Yeah, that's not really an internal error. At this point, do you even need to return anything here, or is it just
We still would have to return none.
Oh. Okay.
I think it was just none because I think this API endpoint that we have is just a result of. I think that's all you need to do.
Yeah, there we go. It looks like it's yep, that should do it. Turn none. Yeah, perfect. That looks all right. What is this? Whatever you. I think this is just a weird refresh glitch.
Yeah, if you save, usually the that kind of stuff goes away.
No, actually, I wonder. No, yeah, that should work. That shouldn't actually cause any problems. I don't know what that. That's odd. That is very odd. But
Yep.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, it just took a minute to catch up. Cool. All right. So I think that'll do us for signatures. So now we need to build and test.
Yep. So the way to test this in another scenario or in another editor is we have a setting that you can set to point to a built DLL of FsAC.
Right.
And so the
First
first
I-
thing
first
to
I-
do is actually go to your terminal. I would even just go as far as to go directly to the source file or the source path to FSAC itself, just the end result there. Because we do some extra other stuff that's nice for packaging later, but we don't really for like a dev experience.
So
But just build straight in go to the source directory for FSAC
right.
instead of .NET Run. Just do like a .NET or CD
Yeah,
to
yeah.
it.
Sorry. Yeah. Well,
And then there's also one magic thing that we kind of still have to deal with, because this is like deep lore about just like dealing with like different scenarios and contexts, is we have to be able to build for like .NET 6 or 7, we have to actually set like a separate environment variable.
okay. What's that?
It's just build, was it build net 7? Yeah, if you look at the project file, we actually have this in there.
Project file is here somewhere. I just saw it a minute ago. No.
Are you talking about the
variable.
BuildNet 7 stuff and BuildNet 8 stuff?
Yeah.
You don't need to care about that at all. Like you can
Oh.
just .NET build, and Ionide takes care of everything. So just like
Really?
run .NET build here. Yeah.
It's if you
That's-
don't want to run on 7 specifically, you can still run on, because like we build 6 by default.
And the reason this works, so when you load up into Ionide, you'll
Yeah.
point Ionide at home, P+Succi, source, FSAC, source, FSAC,
Mhm.
then debug. And that's it. Like you no longer need to go all the way to the TFM or the DLL. So long as you provide that like configuration based path, Ionide will figure out which of the available variants you have is the appropriate one to use.
That is
And
actually pretty cool. I did not know that.
It'll apply all the .NET runtime flags necessary to make sure that the Net 6.0 version can run on whatever runtime you are actually targeting.
So I would say open a completely new editor for a different.
For a different project.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's just a script file or something. But the reason for that is like if we ended up breaking something in FSAC, try to reload into FSAC, now you just don't have a working LSP server.
Fair enough. So just here the .NET Core DLL path, or
Yep, just paste the path in there.
okay,
There's
the
a
path.
big long comment to talk about what we do, but that should be enough.
Yeah, I'm not going to read the whole big long comment.
And then you need to just reload or I don't think restart service works for that. I don't know if it does or not. Then yeah, just
Okay.
open a project.
Open recent. What do I have here? That's fun. But let's open Anonoid, because this is the project that I was messing about with when I was pestering you about all those documentation things. And very originally, this was going to be what I talked to when I talked with Edgar. We were going to have an Amplify F# session about this library, but then the idea of looking at stuff for Ionide came along, and that was way cooler. So I guess the easiest way to test this, first of all, it looks like nothing's broken to start with. So that's fun. But I am going to actually go to the output here and go, no, not to NuGet, go to the F# output. And I know one of the things that triggers it is hovering sort of in weird space. And yeah, we don't see it anymore.
You can also right click in the console and clear the console so you can see like new messages coming in. Yep.
Yeah. So, but what I actually want to do is like, if I hover.
I know for sure like the square braces will. Oh, looks like we still have some. Cannot find ident for tooltip.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the log, but we don't get the error.
Yeah, we don't get the error anymore. That's our log. I'm not sure what this error promote is coming from. Oh, that's my code. Sorry, that's the line of code. That's the actual line of code there. I was like, why does it say error? But so I happen to hover onto a line that has error on it. There we get an actual hover, so we're showing that we didn't break the actual hover tip. So yeah, this is pretty cool. All right. I think we've successfully proved that it works.
Yep. The best way to get rid of error string is just get rid of it.
You know what? At the end of the day, that is the key takeaway here. That is the important learning. When you don't want string errors, just get rid of errors entirely.
Well, so a little bit of history, right? So when some of these methods, so first off, it's a patchwork of different people doing different things at different
course.
times, right?
Of course,
So
of
it's a
course.
living, breathing project. For this one in particular, if I'm remembering correctly, I was in the throes of like must domain model, but also must get something correct, like that I can see working and then check in, right? And so I did the classic thing that everyone does, which is, all right, I'm just going to put string error in here, and I will come back and codify that into the different cases later. And X number of days, months, years later, it's still string, right? There's nothing as permanent as a temporary
fix. I know exactly where you're coming from. I have code that's been in production for 2, 3, 4, 5, however many years now, that has unit annotated integers that are actually supposed to be proper value objects that same thing happened. Oh, it's just a placeholder. I'll go back and get to it eventually, and just never happens. But anyway, cool. So we've got this sort of working. So I guess this whole thing actually, good news, bad news, this has taken less time than I expected it to. And so I guess my question is, what's oh no, that's interesting. I think I did something wrong. If I go back to my no, not extensions. Where's preferences, settings? I'm back in FsAutocomplete, and it looks like it set it in this VS Code instance as well.
Yeah, there's a user setting and a workspace setting. I should have mentioned to put it in the workspace setting.
Oh,
This will be a problem to your reload, but this could be a potential problem. So definitely when you do this kind of testing, put it as a workspace path instead of a user path.
Yeah, I did not realize that. All right, well now I know. Cool. We'll get rid of that. And we'll come here and just take this guy out of here. And now if I reload him, we're back in business. Yep. Okay, cool. Awesome. Awesome. So I guess my next question then is, that's pretty cool. I had made like 7 or 8 bookmarks when I was exploring things, and because of our refactoring, some of the bookmarks are gone now because those lines of code that I marked as, hey, I'm going to want to investigate this more later, no longer exist. That's actually very cool. I like that. So I guess my next question is, where do we want to go from here?
I mean, the question is, did we create, like, because we talked about this a little bit before, is like, did we create a path that's good for us to do this to like other things? I don't know if we want to try to tackle something else today. I mean, we already have an hour into this. It's, do we, like, is this something that's like tenable for other areas? Like maybe just like a quick exploration and see if there's any other places that have some weird
Well, I
error.
mean, the first thing I see up here is just glancing up, just glancing up the file. We have this, and I guess, this is a slightly different. This is not getting the enhanced tooltip. This is just getting the unenhanced tooltip, and we're again back in this situation of, is returning an error for no tooltip the correct thing to do?
Yep, and this would be another place that would be interesting to see where it's being used. If you actually right click on Get Tooltip and go to Show Call Hierarchy, this is something I implemented recently, and so I want to show it off.
Ooh, fun.
You can actually see all the places it's used in the call hierarchy.
I did not know you added this. This is awesome. I did not know
I
this
did not
was
implement the other way around, unfortunately, but
well, that's okay. That's okay.
It calls, but at least you can explore up.
Oftentimes, exploring up is the more important case.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's
so you can see cool. This is used in pipeline hints and inline values.
Yeah,
and are the primary ones.
And something called typesig, but I'm not sure what typesig is for.
And then, you keep, well, you see there's an F# signature call.
So these are all custom endpoints. So when you did the hover one, you were changing the implementation of a method that is defined in the LSP protocol.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
redundant. The language server protocol. And the type signature for that return value is an optional array of, or an optional structure of some content, right? And we represent the option with none. These methods that are using typesig or using inline values or pipeline hints, these are not protocol messages. These are custom extensions that use JSON RPC and are structurally like declared the same as language server protocol
Right, but they
API
only
spec members.
they only exist in the F# LSP. They wouldn't, other LSPs
Yes.
wouldn't have them. Understood.
And so while you could change your implementation here, in order to see the full end-to-end, you may also need to make matching changes in the Ionide layer itself.
Which is a whole
depending
separate project that I haven't pulled down and cloned and is not loaded up. And yeah, so
Correct. And
that's
then there are some other concerns that we would have to take into account, right? Because these are just methods that any LSP client could call. So we would, if we were doing our due diligence, changing the signatures would be a API rigging change. So we would want to talk to the Vim guys and the Emacs guys and all this sort of thing to make sure that they were using them or not. Broadly speaking, the implementations in those editors are less integrated. So if you're messing with something like for info panel and Ionide, you can generally be assured that no one else is using it. But so it's more than just change the code at this point. It becomes a process thing.
Understood. Here's where we
like
really
if you
feel the knock-on effects. Yeah.
For this, if you look at the signature for this one, this is still implementing a LSP result of option. So looks like we have the possibility of doing the same thing, at least in a couple of these spots.
Oh yeah. For this one, I think you're exactly right. So this one is actually text document inline value, which is an LSP protocol
Well, if
method.
you go to the F# pipeline hints, I think that also allows a return of, if you go up one more, if you go up to the LSPs.
Yeah, up to the actual method. Yeah,
that
this guy.
one's also an async LSP option. So
Perfect.
I think we should be okay.
Interesting.
Then yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, but the F# signature one was the one I was is plain notification.
There's option map there.
Yeah, there's if you look at the type signature above the line, it's also a option as well. I think it can be basically done in this case as well.
All right, cool.
Let's do it.
Let's dig in then. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna go start by stealing my logging code. But I do think so this guy, none. Result or string? What? That's interesting. So I guess this is a result.
Oh, we're messing up that tooltip, aren't we? Yeah.
Delete that line and see how much code breaks.
Yeah. So there's an interesting sort of side discussion here. So we're logging like info level messages for these things, but
sure.
And that's completely correct given everything that we're doing else in the code base. But for a product, what you might do instead is like send some telemetry about the rates of not finding identifiers, right?
That's
or whether it was even a possible like you wouldn't send it all the time because sometimes people are just like way off on the side of their editor or something. But you could, in some of these cases that were truly erroneous, you could like send some telemetry and then on your back end, look at aggregate error rates over time and discover if you have a problem or not. We don't do any of that in Ionide. There's no telemetry aside from what VS Code automatically collects. So we don't have that level of visibility. So we don't have to think about it for this.
But you make a good point that I could easily see how something like this in a different context would absolutely want something like that. So, but yeah, for this guy, we can actually just start by doing, and I will worry about maybe rewriting this into something nicer later. Oh, I put that in the wrong place. Whoops.
Like with the option CE or something?
Yeah, something like that. But just when I'm refactoring things, I like to start with just sort of the shape that's there and then gradually, like, sort of like a falling back to my formal training, which is obviously, for people that don't know, my formal education and background is actually in graphic design, not in computers at all. So the idea of like having a process, having something working, and then going back and revisiting it and making it prettier and whatnot is usually how I work. So yeah, I would start with this, and then maybe we'll go clean this up a little bit later. But cannot find ident for tooltip. Yeah. Okay. And I also then would have to do it. So this just becomes, oh no, that's interesting. This is not
the same API. It's definitely returning a result of something,
yeah, I just noticed
But-
that. I
but it
just
doesn't
noticed
look
that.
like it's necessary to be a result. You could just swap those to some, I think.
That was my gut reaction, but then yeah, okay, well let's try it and see what happens. Bup, 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 bup.
We need to figure out what that indentation aware pasting magic incantation is.
There's definitely a way to do it. But yeah, we have to sort that out at some point. Okay, so this is all right. Is it bad that should these be different messages, or do we think this is all right
I
still?
think that's something we can argue about in the code review.
All right, cool. We'll deal with that later then. All right, so now I broke this because it doesn't match the signature. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. This guy is just result option. And then I'm sure this is going to break things upstream. Look at that. There we are. There's one. Where else are things broken? This should show me where else things are broken.
There should also be a panel if you bring up like is it Control J or something like that brings up
Yeah, problems. That's what I was looking for.
Yep.
There we go. Oh, we have an option by map, right? Nope, that's
I
gonna.
don't think so because those are
Okay.
so this is one of these things that's changing like the string into an LSP result. Don't know if we even need this. I would just eliminate this for now and just see what breaks upstream from this.
Yeah. This layer isn't adding any value except as a transform, right? So.
And that was even just converting it back to an option anyway.
All right, so where's that?
We are nothing if not consistent.
Yeah, okay, look at that. Easy peasy. All right. I feel like that shouldn't have been that simple.
Is there any other problems in our panel still?
No. Oh, yeah, there are. They disappeared, but they came back. Here we go.
Same thing. You probably just wipe it. Don't know if you need to bind anymore either.
Well, you're in a result context, I think. And yeah, there you go.
That should fit.
Done.
And this guy is because it's just taking object. Okay, yeah, so it doesn't care. It'll just write the option. That's fine. Okay, that's wow. Save that. See if any other no other problems. This is surprisingly surprising.
It's so you can sometimes get lucky like this. There's a lot of code in FSAC.
Yes.
But a lot of it is sort of vertical slicey, and we've been trying to move it closer towards vertical slicey over time. Commands.fs is kind of a big giant bear because it holds some of the centralized state, just like the new adaptive F# LSP state or whatever thing that Jimmy made recently is kind of similar. But a lot of the core functionality is just going to be in this one slice where you have an LSP method getting called, some transformation and call to some centralized server or service method to do the grunt work that then returns the data out that then gets transformed into LSP spec, right? So you can stay inside that one silo as much as possible. So
yeah,
long story short, what you're seeing here is about what I would expect for something that doesn't touch on core aspects like type checking.
I dig it. I dig it. That is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So then I guess the last question is, do I want to go back and rewrite this guy to be something cleaner? But I guess I'm not going to deal with that right now.
Yeah, we could do that in a separate thing. But
Yeah,
so
that's
now we have these two places, but they're very similar to each other. The question becomes like when we have other error cases anywhere else is again, we didn't really solve the problem everywhere, but is this something that's tenable across more of our of the project? Might be.
I think the moving out of the result and into just the logging for more places, there's probably not a bunch, but there's almost definitely more places where we can do that. I guess the only other question is, should we try to find a place where that's not appropriate?
Yeah, find find all references on that, and you'll find a ton of them.
Tests.
You don't care about the tests.
No, yeah, I don't. I was hoping to find
I
like,
want to go deep into those because yeah, those are probably called directly from the tests, and that's fine because like
yeah, that's not really important.
these are the end that the client's calling, so it makes sense that the test would call these directly.
Yeah, I guess like this is actually a good example though. Try get line string.
Yeah, let's look at what that's doing.
There we go. Try get line string. Yeah. See now, I guess my personal preference on this, and maybe I'm thinking, I mean, it's expecting a string back, but I would, I wonder why the error type on this isn't something that's like just a record or a union or something that just encapsulates. Well, I guess you already technically have the file name and the position, so I guess putting it in the response type is the result type is a little weird.
I think that's one of those composition problems, right? Because it's like you don't know, depending on how deep your composition tree of DUs gets, this
Mhm.
information be useful.
Yeah, that was sort of my original, just very naively, my thought is, okay, well, looking at the interpolated string, there's two properties that are being spit out into the interpolated string. Maybe instead, those two properties just go in a record, and that type becomes the error type that we return as part of the result, which would be, so, why didn't that work? Is it that? Now I've hit totally the wrong button. Fine, we'll do it this way. And obviously, an anonymous record may not be the best choice here, but
Good start.
yeah, something slightly more structured just to show what I was thinking. Except you don't use colons there. I'm now mixing. This is what happens when you bounce between too many languages. I'm now mixing JavaScript and F# and Rust and
I
everything.
think
all
we
together.
actually have code fixes for when you use the wrong
Really?
property declaration syntax in these.
I did not know that. That's awesome. But yeah, something like that. And then maybe we need to make it a proper type at some point. But I don't know. I think this is already. What's nice about this is, yeah, like to your point, as you get down into the compositional hierarchy of things, depending how deeply you're nested, having this in the error might be actually useful. The other thing is, I always like to think about is if I just have the interpolated string, I can't do anything else. But having this record structure doesn't prevent callers from turning it into the interpolated string. So you're sort of gaining functionality. You know what I mean?
Right. And
So
if you really wanted to get like super what was it, precise, doing strings like that is a global or localization nightmare.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's no absolutely. Like how would you yeah. So all right, so let's go see. Oh, we created 37 problems with that one change. Woohoo! Excellent. This is much more like what I was expecting. Um,
Yeah, so this becomes a what do we do? I don't think we want to solve it for all 37 today, but like we could solve it for like this one. Like, what do we want to do? Do we log and become like a, do we actually want to return an error, or is this just a none in this case?
Well, so at the
Because we can
moment,
find this information, but or do we bubble it up more?
yeah, I mean, this is at the moment it's trying to turn it into an RPC error and send it back. So text document completion. I didn't actually read the spec on that guy.
Oh, this completion is a very complicated one. We might want
Yes.
something that's a little bit more simple.
Well, let's see what else this is all in this one. Do we have one in a different? We're still in text document completion. Do we have any that aren't in text document completion?
Probably. Yeah.
Here we go. We're back here on our friend adaptive server.
Yeah,
So for
text
this,
references.
yeah.
So this is like a find all references call, I think.
Text document references. So that's
Yep.
interesting. I think in this case, I think we actually would maybe want to bubble it forward.
Oh, so this is the endpoint, right? This is where the transition goes from our code to the LSP protocol stuff. And so
Right.
if
That's. I wonder if this should be an error in the LSP.
Right. So if I right clicked, so basically if I right clicked anywhere and I just was able to click find all references on, like, I don't know, can you right click, let's see, like, can you right click on equal sign, for instance, and do find all references? I guess you technically could, but that's not going to be like that useful.
Yeah.
But like
See,
it
it
would
said
still
no results.
it would be hard. Like I think in this case, it would be hard to create a scenario where you find all references on like you can't just easily click on a thing that's outside the bounds of your text document in like the editor working. So this would be kind of like a weird, I wouldn't say nefarious, but like very erroneous problem coming from the client at this point. So it's very unlikely that we like this kind of starts feeling like not a parse error, but it's not really a server error either.
I'll give you one example of when it could happen, and that is when this text document references call comes in out of order, out of sequence with some textual change to the document that changes the overall number of lines in it.
Okay, fair.
That is just kind of a problem that we have, right? If you hover over reference params, like the type on line 1106, the type declaration. Yeah, so when you look at the text document that's passed in, you just get text document identifier. This is an unversioned reference to a document, right? And so I guess the assumption is that you are using the most up-to-date version, but it is possible that this reference call could have been triggered on an older version of the document that had different content, right?
Race
So
condition.
in this, yeah, totally a race condition. I think it is reasonable for the server to fail if it cannot look up the string here. If we instead were given a versioned text document identifier by the client, VS Code, for example, in this case, then we could maybe have a precondition check and say that we are getting the source for version blah, and therefore we're asserting that the client ensures that this source location does exist at version blah. So we could like safely dot value this option, right? Instead of trying to map the result or something.
Right, that makes sense. So
But we don't,
then,
so we could fail, so we should handle it somehow.
yeah. No, I think that's reasonable. I think it's reasonable then that this would turn into the JSON RPC error. You just result of string error is no longer the right function for that.
Yeah, we probably want to, because we're so many locations for this particular error, it might even be worth just having like a specific like handler for that like anonymous type that you created.
Mm-hmm.
So something like let result
Yeah, line lookup error, whatever it's going to be.
yeah, position is not the right word there, but I just threw something there. Line lookup is line lookup's actually a good one. And now I have to remember what the type was. Where did I stick that guy? I can't remember. Oh, well, anyway, I remember it was file name and position, so. Guessing position was an int, but don't quote me on that.
I will not quote you because I'm pretty sure that's incorrect.
It's probably a more robust type than just an integer. So.
Yeah, line lookups are also super weird because the line lookup, like the line offsets from the compiler's perspective, are not the same as the file system's perspective, are not the same as the LSP protocol's perspective. They have different 0 and 1 offsets.
Oh my God. That's ridiculous.
So we typically just pass around the raw structs for each of those cases and try and keep them away from bare integers as much as possible. And then always go through like conversion functions.
Another type. I started going down the path of creating another type that has implicit conversions to the other stuff just to like get away from like needing to deal with all that like mechanics, all the plumbing.
Yeah.
Why can I not find this? This is annoying. I should absolutely be able to find the thing I'm looking for. I'm just in the wrong place. That's
It's
the
in
issue.
the adaptive server, I think.
Oh.
No, I thought it was in parse. I thought it was here. But maybe you're right. Maybe it was in the adaptive server.
It's just like a small.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's the very top of the file. Close to the top.
Yeah. No.
Keep going up. It'll be. And was it not there? Oh, it's not in our state. Then where? Yeah, where is it? Where is that? Where's that method?
Okay, tooltip result. That's not right. I could swear it was in here somewhere, but I'm not seeing it in here either.
Big question. Did you actually save the file?
Well, let's see what files I have open. I don't. Why is it not showing me the open files?
Because you disabled it.
I don't know why I did that. Look at that. I didn't actually. Well, no, that's the file I've been editing.
I think it's adaptive server state.
Yeah, that sounds right. But where did I put it?
I guess
the reason why I was looking in here, and I'm surprised adaptive server state is
We're all collectively going insane.
Yeah, I mean, you guys saw me delete that line, right? Like I commented it out and replaced it with the.
I never saw anything. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're disavowing any and all knowledge of my activities. Is it up here, maybe? Wonder.
Probably get line string lives in common.fs. Okay.
Okay.
So go over to common.
Common. There we go.
So it's just way down in the same file that you were already in.
Oh, look at that. Wow, I did not realize that was going to be. I expect that to be in the same file.
Okay, so it is just.
So it's just in
an
common.
int?
Well, we're about to. I'm about to go to common and change it. So how did I? There we go. Too many files open. So what I'd wanted to do was just copy the message, and then this just becomes X file name and X position, and I think that's that. Because if we go back to where I just had that. Where the hell was
I don't think it's tech. If we were using the correct domain term, I don't think it's actually a position. Or is it actually position? Oh, it is actually a position. Okay.
It is a type called position. It's not a type called
position.
So should I as column and line? Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to actually change that to position here.
This is what Chet was kind of describing, is that the F# compiler has a different notion of position here. And so showing this to somebody, do we want to convert this to the LSP's version of a position before we print, like give them the error message? they
I
would
think we
think
do.
100%.
Yeah, I think up to this point, keeping the position is good, but I think here,
Yeah.
before we actually print out the internal error message, we should absolutely convert it. But I'm not sure.
We have a function for that. It's
I was
called
hoping you were going to say that.
yeah, I believe it's called FCS pause to pause or FCS pause to protocol. Yeah, there you
Pause
go.
to
FCS
LSP.
pause to LSP. Yeah. And you would just pass in X dot position at this point.
And now just a style question. Do you prefer the intermediate variable? Do you prefer me to put it right in the interpolation? Do you prefer like a primed?
interpolation should be as simple as it can be.
And then we go shadowing or primed. Some people like their primes and some people like their shadows. I know there's heated debates about that.
Yeah. Now
The only question I would care about is if it
Oh, this is wrong.
how it displays in the debugger.
also the position here,
Type
if you-
aliasing.
it might not be the right position because, like we said,
Correct.
there's like
Not.
4 different
It's not.
positions.
It's supposed to
And
be
so
FCS
We
pause.
have an alias called FCS pause. Yep.
To make that super clear. Yep.
But then now I have the question: is
The one you had down here should have been correct.
Yeah.
it says position.
Because text.getLine is what's driving that inference.
Right, so it should. So this guy
Yes.
should.
And if you go to
actually be-
text.getLine, you'll see that that should be explicitly qualified to be, or implicitly qualified based on the opens to be F# compiler text position, which is the compiler's kind of position.
Yeah, F# compiler.
Tracking the different positions is the best thing.
It sounds like it's so much
all
fun.
It's all just like little off by one stuff. It's very literally the computer science joke magnified multiple times.
Okay, so where was I? So this guy doesn't need to be of string error anymore. This guy now needs to be our new helper that we just added. Result dot line lookup error. That didn't work. Why didn't that work? A unique overload. Oh,
Oh yeah, this is gonna get fun. If you go to do the line lookup error, what is that actually returning there?
that's actually returning an error. This needs to be an LSP error or something, right? No,
Yeah.
this should just totally be a result.
It's because the LSP error is there's of core response. Yeah, what's the I wish that error message was better at that, but
So the error message in the other place is the one where the computation expression can't infer the source type correctly. Usually it's
case.
Usually it's because one half of the result, I find, not usually, but often it's because one or the other half of the result isn't lining up the way it expects it to.
It's the, I was going to say.
Oh, yeah, this is why.
Yeah.
No.
That's
not
of string error, and it's unifying to
error.
I guess LSP. Which error though? I think that's the LSP protocol error.
That's
I
probably
that was
the issue.
Same error type.
Well, so I think he just needs to. Oh yeah. So that's. Wait, which error is that on line 22?
I'm gonna try something here. I think.
So the way I would diagnose this is if you go back to the call site where we're having that issue.
Oh, I know what it is. We're not passing in a result. We're passing in the actual error body on the result line lookup error call. We need to change the input parameter to line lookup error.
Yes. I see it. It's
yes. So this needs to be a result of this or of T
correct.
or this structure.
Right. Correct. Yes. Now I see it. Good eyes. I missed that.
And then the entire rest of it just goes into map error.
Yeah. That makes sense. And then this guy needs to be R pipe. Map error. There we go. That should hopefully.
Keyboard shortcut to drag that like paren down.
Which one?
So when you drag that paren down, like the multiple lines, what is that keyboard shortcut? I need to use that.
Alt up and down, I think.
Yeah, I use Alt up arrow and Alt down arrow.
Oh yeah, I'm using that all the time.
If you
now.
are super fancy, like if you have your LSP configured really nicely to where it's indentation or scope aware, dragging it up or down will find and apply it to the correct scope as well. We are not that fancy.
Yeah, that'd be
Wow,
nice.
that is wild. Still having errors though. Come on. A unique overload for source could not be.
Yeah, okay, near the end usually gives you something a little bit more interesting. String.
Oh, I see the issue. I'm
Oh,
my bad.
because
This
it's
is
the wrong
this
kind
is
of
this
string. It's the tagged
this-
union.
no, it's just because this.
Oh yeah, you doubled up.
I doubled up when I switched to result.mat. It's not bind error. It's mat. Like I don't need the inner.
Yeah.
So that should.
I think we're still going to have an error.
I
And this one is because of tagged union values. So the file path is not just a string, it's a string local path, which is a unit of measure tagged string.
Well,
And this is another one of those cases where we have 8 different kinds of file paths. And so we're using UOMs to disambiguate them. Local path is the name of the UOM tag type. And
perfect.
this represents like a fully qualified absolute path on the local disk.
I have to be honest. I am hugely a fan of extending UOM style augmentations to strings. Potentially other types, but strings are really the one where I find I need it the most.
Well,
I'm a huge fan of that.
I wanted to have some sort of position structure that could be UOM tagged to be the LSP view or the compiler view or whatever other view, but the types have different property names and things like that, so it wasn't as simple as just
Right.
tagging it in that way. So anyway, we're good. Everything
Yep,
is
you were
great
right.
now.
That was it. We've got our types right now. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So I still have only 35 more 34 more problems. Woohoo!
And I mean, they'll all be solved, or they should be likely solved in similar ways now, adding a mapping to that result from a line error or whatever.
What is this guy
Like
supposed to
half
be
of them, I
source?
expect.
I think some of these are also just helpers on top of that to kind of
Let get parse results for file. Okay.
So
File
generally
source.
speaking, to get the parse results for a file, you need to have the content for the file, get the specific line that is being dealt with, and then ask for the check results for that. Boom, boom, boom. This just orchestrates that process, each of which could fail in a different way.
Makes sense. So, but in this case, it should just be a matter of.
This is error type unification, I think, because
Yeah,
the
that's all
let
it
bang
is.
above it. Yeah, so this
Yeah.
is where you start getting into, okay, at this point, do I reify this into a string? Like, do I map my error into a user-facing string? Or do I start domain modeling my errors for this function and care about the differences between being unable to read this file versus unable to get a line from this file?
Correct. And I don't know, again, I don't know which is the better call in this particular case. You are right, that is the sort of trade-off we're talking about. The other thing I start to think is if there's going to be a lot of places where we want to put this into a string, then maybe we want a different helper function somewhere that simplifies that, but I don't know. Probably this being a internal method to some other, to orchestrating the code fix. I don't know that it makes sense to do a lot of modeling with it. It probably does make sense to just say, okay, well, for now we'll put it into a string and then maybe revisit if the overall process really needs to be an async result of string. But it sounds to me like because this is a inside of another let binding, it's probably we don't need to do a lot of complex modeling here.
Yeah.
This can probably be just a
So I'm looking at your error views or
yeah.
your problem view down below, and I'm seeing a ton of errors that are about mapping to the JSON RPC error type.
Mm-hmm.
And so those I expect like a super straightforward transformation using the helper method you've already got, and that'll clear out like half of what's there, leaving just a few of these like specific case mappings that we have to actually care about, you know?
Agreed. I agree. I
So-
think that's exactly what's going to wind up happening. Like this is another one that no, this is the one we said was special.
I think it's still because it is mapping to a result of string error. I think that's all still the same kind of
Hmm.
helper stuff. Yeah. So pretty much anywhere that's doing that of result, or this one might be a problem because I think
Well,
that one's an intermediate.
Let's start with the easy ones first.
Yeah.
Yes. I do kind of wish, I don't know of any editor that supports this. I do kind of wish I could do like a global find and replace, but only on things that are lighting up as an error. And I've never seen that feature in any editor ever, but that would be for something like this. That would just be super brilliant. Because I don't want to replace every instance of result of string error. I just want replace the ones that are currently lighting up as errors in my
If you
problems.
wanted to, you could try, because the thing is like this would be formatting agnostic, right? Is you could still just like replace that like whole line because it looks like it's very stamped out across, but even then it's like formatting get in the way of that.
Yeah, too much wild copy and play. I mean, I'm all for some very exotic copy paste or copy replace, like especially with I tried to have this conversation with Matt Cruz ages ago. He was like, oh, now I'm all a fan of columnar editing because it makes you faster. I was like, yeah, I used to like columnar editing, and then I discovered regular expressions in my find and replace, and now I don't need columnar editing. But at some point, it just gets to be a little too exotic, and then, you know. So that one, this one is also just a straightforward mapping through. This one and this one look like legitimately things we want to consider. Because again, what we're mapping to here is not, well, that's interesting.
Get completions. That's
Yeah.
probably the line above it. The get completions, just the function itself.
Yeah. Ooh, that's kind of a gnarly one.
It is a gnarly one. Yeah.
That needs a
Ace-
rec.
Yeah, it's async result of, so it's just an option of an array, a string, a bool, a parse check result, and a lookup function or a callback function to get the list of assembly symbols and a volatile file. Or it's a string. This is a great example of what we were talking about when we started the conversation. Like, look at how complex our type system is. And unless you go wrong, then you just get a string.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not going to go ahead and put that into like a proper record or anything right now because that's a whole separate can of wax. But do we
Yeah.
think this is just the right answer here for now? So just normalize it to a string, or do
I
we think we
think
want to actually put
definitely
some
like this is where I'd put a to do where and be like, hey, I need to look at this a little bit later, but I do want to get to a compilable state.
right? So something like no. Let me fix that first.
Yeah. So you're going to like factor this out or something. That string formatting you could pull out into a separate method and then compose into the final one.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. That's actually a good idea, and I think common is actually the right place to put that.
Because we've already seen we need the
Yeah,
different formulations of it.
yeah. So I guess the only thing I start to think now, if instead of an anonymous record, I had a named record, this would make a nice little method on the nominal record itself.
Mhm.
but I don't know if it's worth the trouble of refactoring this anonymous record into a named record. But then I don't know where to stick the message generating function otherwise. So sort of an interesting set of trade-offs.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you. Just
fair enough.
I think a lot of these are just like we can do these and then we can argue about them in code review.
Yeah, that's fine. I think for now I'm just gonna do. I guarantee you this won't be the final place this lives, but because why not?
Nothing's more permanent than a temporary workaround.
Well, that's probably unfortunately true, but we're gonna keep this really temporary. I promise. Let's call it let format. We'll come back to the actual shape of X in just a minute. Sure, then this guy can just be.
It's just a composition of the format line lookup and the of string error. No.
Oh, in fact, we also need to fix what's going on in the actual string template because the position tick isn't being used. So we're still surfacing the compiler positions.
Yeah, I did that wrong because that's actually supposed to be position prime, right?
Yep.
So it's the right
I would
way
move
to do.
To the format line. Oh
Yeah.
This is the hard part. Is like, which context do you care about this being in?
Yeah, and you can get super wacky with it and say, okay, you know what, we're going to put an extra higher order function. We're going to make format line lookup error a higher order function and take in an optional formatter that we sometimes run through. And if people don't want it, they can just pass through ID and like that. That's maybe a bridge too far.
I think like normalizing everything to the LSP's version of what a position is, I think is perfectly fine.
That does strike me as reasonable enough, because
I think if you already have like the understanding of these domain concepts, as long as it's consistent, I think is the key there.
yes. And I think this guy can just be this, right? I can just do the other thing I've you talk about a living project and passing through many hands, and one of the things I question or am curious about is how often do you go with like the point free, or do you spell it out, or I mean that's one of those
For
things.
these things, yeah, point free all day long. There is no value in having the intermediates for these little chaining guys.
Yeah, these things are. I don't. I think in a lot of ways that even just reads more easily. Like these things are simple enough. But
theoretically, it looks like you could even get rid of the whole map error, and instead of passing it to an internal message, you could just go to the of string error method or function that you have above. So you would just compose format line look error and the of string error message, or just compose those two functions.
You've lost me entirely.
Oh, I guess they're not composable because the other one's not. That's just getting a string. That's fine.
Yeah.
No, let's keep it. We'll keep it.
What we should do is put an extra space here so I can actually see what's going on. There we go. Okay, so now if I go back to this guy can just be that. I don't need the parentheses.
Yep.
And I'm going to add a to-do right here. Yeah, here's good enough. I always did that wrong. There we go. Right. And then I think we're going to wind up doing something very similar in the next one. and we're back at a, hey, look, I can actually sort of compile now.
Huzzah.
Ta-da! All right. Okay, now where were we?
Well, I think that was all happening so that we could remove a few more errors from surfacing during tooltip, line lens,
yeah,
and one other thing. And so
we had those. Where did that window go?
This particular change was just the try-get line string because we were kind of looking at like where do we just use
where to
strings
go from here.
way. And so that's why this was a very invasive one, because this is like quite literally every single one of our endpoints need to get some line string.
Yeah.
Not every single one, but most of them. But we're still basically we did kind of just propagate the error message to a different level now.
Yeah, that doesn't really solve the problem. It just sort of passes the buck a little bit, which I don't love. I got to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I do think it's a step in the right direction, at least.
Right.
Sure, because where we started, we were back here and looking at
Yeah, try get tooltip and try get tooltip enhanced were the sort of first.
Yeah, but we agreed both of those where you could just log them. We were trying to find an example of something where we can't just pass it off to logging.
Mm.
This is one of those like we technically want to look at all whatever maybe like 25 places that we just replaced, and it'd be like, does it make sense to return LSP error here? And I don't know, it's that gets a little like dodgy from a time use perspective too.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Also, it's very interesting that we made like 30 or 40 changes and we're only in like 3 or 4 files.
Well,
5 files.
That's not a great thing. I know it means there's a lot of functionality in those files, but I mean, like we were talking about before, commands is kind of a big centralized touch point, and the LSP server itself is a big centralized touch point, right? Like it has essentially the deserialization and serialization layers or transport layer
Yeah.
mappings for every method, right? So
try get tooltip. Oh, that's right. Where was I? No, I'm sorry. I've lost. I had a thought for a second, then I totally lost the thread of it. I apologize. That's
there are way fewer uses of string error than I thought there would be.
I'm sure there's an async result version. There's an async result version of that.
yeah. I think if we go look at the async one, you'll find this is the one I was originally looking at. There's quite a bit more
about that.
Yeah.
And then there's the core. We look at core response, we can see that we kind of had some modeling around some stuff previously, but
info response errors. This is again we're back to yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. It's a core response, but is it an info response, an error response, or a response? And if it's info or error, it reminds me sort of, it's sort of like the idea of like warnings in a result type, but different.
Yeah, it's like we can't process anymore, but it's not necessarily like a panic, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so we're back to building again. Things compile. We have no errors in our error panel. Where should we go from here?
I mean, if you wanted to make sure you hadn't broken anything, then like
yeah, we could do that.
You could look at what endpoints were using that try get tooltip without the enhanced, and we could go to your other VS Code window, reload it, and verify that.
I accidentally closed it, so yes, but we can do that.
It was
hierarchy.
So it was like completions. It was like find all references. So I think those would be
pipeline hints, text document inline value, and F# signature. So
yeah, if you've got an example of like pipeline hints in
That's
your
an
other
easy one.
project.
Yeah, I'm sure I do. I can't imagine I would not. I hit the wrong button.
You canceled the build.
Yeah, what was I thinking? I know what I was thinking. I was thinking I hit the wrong button. This guy is meant to be Control-Shift-C, and instead I stupidly just hit Control-C. Forgot the Shift key there. All right, give this a second to spin up. Should be fine. I can't imagine there'd be any issues.
Well, yeah, we might have a file locking if an LSP server is using it, but it is not good. The one thing that people might this is where I say, like, if you have an instance of VS Code already looking at this DLL, MS Build can't overwrite that. It'll have like a process lock issue, and so you have to like close the other editor,
How do we
and that's
get
why
to
it
the-
gets into like a very fun scenario.
Yeah. So you can open up the command palette, and which is Control-Shift-P, and then you can type settings.
Yeah, but I didn't see workspace settings. I only saw an option for user settings.
Just go
It's
to
there.
that. There's a tab
works-
that you eventually
yeah.
get to.
Yeah, that's
settings sync.
Oh no, that's
Oh, you don't have a
Oh,
workspace
oh.
open. That's why.
ah.
This is just a
I should open the
bare
project. Yeah,
business.
I can open the project first, and then I'll get the workspace, and then
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
So
Okay.
now all of those will light up.
Yeah, okay, that works. That's fine. Yes, there we go. Workspace, and then in workspace, I want FSAC, and I want this guy to be that. Cool, and then I should
And
do
reload.
wrong button. Reload window. Cool. And now let me go figure out where I have a pipeline. Oh,
Oh, that's fun.
we broke something.
Do you have a space or something? Sometimes, like, if you copy a space, or
I might have done that now that you've said that.
that's the one thing I know that I sometimes hit that immediately. We need to probably trim. I don't know if trimming's the right answer, but we probably need to trim that.
No, but I'm sure I I'm sure that's my fault. I grabbed too much off the
Yeah, I would look at the very beginning, see if there's a space
Yeah.
there, and look at the end and see if there's a space there. Oh, you know what? You're in the core. You grabbed the core. You didn't grab.
Yeah, so
I-
just delete .core and you should be good to go.
Yeah, I grabbed the wrong path. That explains it.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And then save and restart and you're good to go.
There we go. Alrighty. Yep, that looks like it's working now. Now let's go find something that has a I mean, I guess technically that's a pipeline, so, but
You need it on the multiple lines to get the pipeline hints to show up on the like at each stage of the pipeline, you know?
let me go see if I have a long enough pipeline in here. Somewhere in here.
I think if you wanted to, you could probably break that one into multiple stages, size to stack alloc to void pointer.
One thing I want to figure out is why is our MS build loading design time loads take so long. Sometimes it just sits there. I don't know why.
So
Weird.
yeah, I don't
You see it.
Oh, it still hasn't finished loading. That's why.
Yeah, like
you
our
look at the
design.
bottom-
Sometimes our design time builds are like
oh yeah,
2 or 3
Project Red.
seconds, and then sometimes it's like, I don't know, a minute.
That's so light I could barely
whatever.
see it, but yeah, project loading. This is my fault. This particular library has also VB and C# projects in it, and I feel like I've noticed that when you try to get MS Build to do VB things, VS Code gets a little sketchy. The MS Build stuff seems to.
Where's the Solution Explorer? The Ionide one.
Oh,
It
the
probably
one
hasn't
for.
shown
Oh,
up
hey,
yet,
it just
'cause, you know,
finished. It just finished.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Eh.
Like I said, like sometimes like the design time builds take like 2 seconds. Sometimes it's like a minute. Don't know.
What is probably happening here is you've got multiple things stomping on the intermediate files because I imagine because you have C# and VBasic, the C# extension is up and loading and doing things, and they're like churning. One of them is touching something, which is causing the other one to have to reevaluate.
That could be. That could very well be.
So the lesson
but-
here is only do F# always, right? For every single thing. That's Paul's favorite
Absolutely.
assertion, right?
Absolutely. Who needs any other language? F# the
Amen.
only language you need, man. Only
If
language you
only.
need. Would be nice. Would be nice, but
Um,
I think the secret is we need to take a page from C Sharp's book. We need an FLR, and then the problem is solved. Then everything can be an F sharp once we have
Called
an F sharp.
Fable.
yeah.
Fair
Okay,
enough.
so for whatever reason, this is not triggering the pipeline hints. And it may just be like a detection, like the feature has kind of got some safeguards in, right? It tries to detect pipelines that it thinks it can correctly fit
Can
the
I-
slices on.
Let me help
and-
you with one other thing. I have an idea.
Uh-huh.
It's
Setting.
entirely possible I have pipeline hints disabled.
Oh, yeah, that's possible for sure. Nope, they're enabled.
Oh,
Sweet.
they are enabled. Okay, yeah. I
What
thought I
about at
had-
the workspace level? They could technically be turned off
If
there.
they're, yeah, you're right. He's at the workspace level.
when I just switched over to it.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. Go back to workspace and click that checkbox for
That's in-
inline values as well.
Okay.
I think this is the new mechanism that we unified on.
Okay.
Because
we
it's
have
something that has better support at the LSP layer.
You
But
might
it's-
need to like save the file to retrigger some things sometimes. But nope.
But it may also be just deciding that the shape of this pipeline is not compatible because there's an expression at the end, like that's comma related. So it may be easier to find a different one or to make a
Or just
dummy
create
one.
a function here real quick and
Let's
Yeah.
actually go look at the tests. I would bet my test suite
It's still
probably-
loading again.
yeah,
So
you
hooray.
made the mistake and reloaded, and now MS Build's gonna punish you.
Oh, MS Build, you are killing me.
What's actually, it's not MS Build. It's the fact that we don't have a single shareable unified open source project system for .NET, but I will not get on that particular soapbox.
There we go. This one should be a little bit better. It's a little bit simpler.
Yes.
It doesn't go
Yes.
into a into an expression at the end. It should actually trigger correctly once we finish loading.
So I will see you all in about 3 minutes. And
This is cool though. This is the thing that I always get sort of, if I could put on my fuddy old man hat for a minute, the thing that I always get gobsmacked by is I think about where F sharp started and where we're at now, and it's just like, wow, it's amazing the level of tooling and support and sophistication and performance we have around it is just kind of incredible.
Yeah, and to be honest, as somebody who's relatively new to all of this, I gotta be honest, guys. Beyond my own self-imposed stupid stuff like NixOS, it was super easy to get going. Like it's been very, if that matters to you guys, for somebody's completely. I mean, I've been doing F sharp for less than a year. What, about 8 months now? And it's been awesome. It's been my favorite language I've ever used. So, and the tooling's great. The compiler's awesome.
Love to
Best
hear
friend.
it. I love to hear it. I love to hear it. I also
we've cracked the projects.
all right, huzzah! So
I should wait. Doesn't MS Build have open telemetry support? Maybe I should diagnose
No,
this one.
it doesn't. I've made a tool that will take a bin log and generate OTel spans, but it is really hard getting internal traction for something that doesn't have a direct dollar value attached to it sometimes.
it
So-
seems like it's not. Do you know what? Let's have some fun. Let's make it work even harder.
Just pipe all the way through.
Yeah, let's just get rid of the
Yeah.
intermediates and be like, normally I like to have a couple of intermediates hanging out because whatever, but
I do have one question.
you were
Paul.
also using
What's
the
with the
name, but-
arrows? Is that like a character replacement or point? Is that just okay? Because I've been confused the entire time, but I just assumed because like that's the only thing that makes sense there. So,
That's a feature of a font called ligatures.
Yes.
A ligature is when a font has a special support for changing the way that a particular sequence of characters renders. You will probably also see ligatures if Paul has double equals anywhere or not equals.
I have a bunch. I mean, I'm using Furacode right now, which has a mountain of ligatures. Like for instance, if I did not equals is a good one. You get a ligature.
oh,
You can actually also see the right arrow in the
for the
type
Hasklers in the room.
annotation.
I know it doesn't do. Yeah, there you go.
there you go.
You get kind of weird. It gets a little funky. We could always turn ligatures off if it throws people off. I mean, some people don't like it. Some people it causes issues. I sort of turned it on once and kind of forgot about it and just sort of got used to it. I'm still not getting
So
pipelines though, which is weird.
we're not. So this is where I would say, okay, this is where the tests in FS Autocomplete would let you know if you borked something, because we have tests for pipeline hints and this sort of thing.
Then let's
So
go
you
back
could use
to.
the Test Explorer to try running some of those.
Does the Test Explorer actually work? Because
It does.
I had some issues with it.
Search in that box up there for pipeline. Where does that? Yeah, and keep expanding all the dillies. Keep going.
Goodness, my goodness.
Oh, never mind. That's just tests for parameter hints for when functions are piped. So we may not have tests for pipeline hints. And so then I would say, okay, stash this, go add tests. Then right, like this is a process that we hit like when we make changes, especially to the LSP endpoints. LSP is a fairly easy protocol to test from like an inputs outputs perspective, because you just get these JSON structures that you can assert on. So for this case, I would do just that. Make some tests that assert that when I write this pipeline, I get these annotations delivered through the inlay hints infrastructure, and then make your change and then go. So with that, I've got to duck. You cool kids. Keep having
I think we
fun.
should wind this down as well. I've got to start to wrap up some things before the day is over. But this has been awesome. I think what I will do, if it's okay with y'all, I will go ahead and stash this, actually add some tests for the pipeline, unstash this, get it all sorted, and get a PR set up, hopefully later tonight or later this weekend, certainly at the latest.
Sweet.
Does that sound cool?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Awesome sauce. Very
Thanks,
cool.
everybody.
Yes,
been fun.
thanks tons. Yes, this has been fantastic. Thank you all.
All right. Thanks so much, Paul.
Yeah, my pleasure. Talk to you all later.